rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Well, as much fun as we've been having talking about the Bad Batch, it's going to be kind of nice to broaden the scope of conversation here on Rebel Force Radio. Of course, I think we have some voicemails coming up talking about the Bad Batch. I like that Star Wars fans are talking about the show and asking all kinds of interesting questions about Omega and the future of the Batch. Could there be a movie? Could there be a Bad Batch movie? Some people are asking what might happen, but this is the last season. And if you listen to this week's Bad Batch After Show, you know there's a lot of predictions of more doom, more gloom for the Bad Batch. I don't think anyone really sees them moving to that tranquil planet of Pabu to live out their days in paradise. If anything, the talk last night was that, you know, the planet might just be razed, just blown to holy hell. That seems to be maybe more in line with the Bad Batch. But anyway, yeah, we'll talk a little bit of Bad Batch, plus updates on the ACOLYTE, the Gina Carano lawsuit against Disney, Billy Dee Williams, the new book, the autobiography, What Have We Here, audio highlights from that. And if there's time, Star Wars and pop culture. And as I say, some listener feedback by way of voicemail. So glad to have you with us this week for Rebel Force Radio. We are your source for the Force, and it's always great to hang out together. My name is Jason, if you're new to the program, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yep, we're back again. Second time this week. We're doing 2 shows a week once again, so strap in, because it's going to be RFR overload here for the next few months. So be looking for new episodes of the weekly show to be dropping on Saturday morning. I'll try to hit it around the same time every morning. But that's how we have to do it when we have Bad Batch on Wednesday nights. Then RFR gets moved to Saturday mornings. So, hey, you know, maybe you're watching Saturday morning cartoons, having a bowl of sugary cereal, and you got RFR in your ears. Do they still do Saturday morning cartoons, for crying out loud? I have no idea.
I don't think that they do. But in the day and age of streaming, you can always have Saturday morning cartoons. You know, I fire up
anytime's a Saturday.
I fire up the Boomerang app, and I'll be watching some classic Hanna-Barbera, or I'll throw in some old DVDs of Super Friends. I can curate my own. But I tell you what, there's nothing quite like having it served up for you, you know, like it did back in the old days. And it's a shame. That's something that I remember as a kid thinking that I would be able to experience Saturday morning cartoons with my own kids. And it didn't happen. I mean, we watched a lot of cartoons, but, you know, not that Saturday morning tradition. That seemed to have really left us, I think, in the late 90s. And I remember the Saturday morning cartoon window getting shorter and shorter and shorter. You know, it used to be like 7 a.m. until noon. It was like 7 to noon. It was cartoons. And then it was like 7 to 11. And then they started introducing like Sports Illustrated for kids, which I really wasn't into. And
nobody wants to watch that.
Yeah. So, but thankfully, you know what? I feel like the way, I know my uncles that grew up in the 50s, I feel that way about the 80s. I think I grew up in the best time there was to be a kid. I think the 70s and 80s was the best time, but some boomers might argue and say it was the 50s, but
you won't get any arguments from me. As a child of the 70s, I had a damn good time. So, and those Saturday morning cartoons, it was just an event. It was an event. It was kid time. Now I think all the time is kid time. I was so surprised when things like Cartoon Network started to show up on the scene, and just the idea that you could turn a TV on at nighttime and see cartoons, that was so rare prior to satellite and then streaming and on-demand viewing.
Yeah.
It was just so rare to see a cartoon when the sun had gone down. I mean, there were very few. The Flintstones, of course, was a primetime cartoon, and The Simpsons, of course. But outside of that, you just never saw cartoons at night. And so the first time that I think I saw a cartoon on TV, like, I don't know, Scooby-Doo or something, and it was 9 o'clock at night. I was like, wow, this is
It felt weird. I remember it felt
so
weird. Yeah. I shouldn't be watching this right now. But I made sure when my kids, both of my kids, especially my daughter, I made sure that she got a steady dose of classic Hanna-Barbera stuff. She watched Scooby-Doo.
Yes.
She watched Flintstones. She watched, and then we would do like the SpongeBob and stuff. But the modern stuff, it's too fast for me. It's like all this kind of anime or Japanime or whatever the hell it is. It's too fast, and the eyes are always jiggling. Everyone looks like they're about to cry. I'm just not into it. Not my.
I haven't noticed, but I mean, I haven't noticed, and I don't even care anymore. So
Mac was too busy watching iCarly on Nickelodeon.
It's not iCarly.
I thought
the
iCarly was your guilty pleasure.
Listen, I saw several episodes of iCarly. Okay, but that wasn't my guilty pleasure. My pleasure was so guilty, I'm almost ashamed to bring it up. But yes, I did watch pretty much every episode of That's So Raven.
Oh, that's the one it was.
That's So Raven.
Okay.
And I saw Ashley Eckstein make her live action run on that show. She played Buffy, and she went by the name Ashley Drake, which was her, I think it was her maiden name, but it could have been a showbiz name too. I'm not 100% sure. After she married David, she changed the last name to Eckstein, and the rest is history. But that's where Ashley was. You can catch those episodes of That's So Raven, I'm sure, streaming somewhere.
Was she a returning character, a semi-regular?
She was in like a recurring character. She was in a few episodes. Yeah.
Oh,
not a regular, but
you can also catch Ashley in The Bradys Go to the White House.
Yeah. For sure. I made Ashley talk to me as Jan Brady once.
Yeah,
that's true.
She was Jan. She was a pretty nice looking Jan, I got to say. I mean, as Jan Brady's go, it was like Ashley was almost, too pretty to play Jan Brady. I think Ashley's got more Marsha in her than she does Jan. But she played it great with the braces and the headgear and all of that stuff.
Yeah, she had all the affectations. And everything. And of course, Saturday morning cartoons has a history in Star Wars. That's where the droids Ewoks hour happened in the mid-'80s.
Yeah, 1985.
I never saw it in the mid-'80s. I mean, that show debuted about the same time I got my driver's license, so the notion of me going to bed early went right out the window, and maybe I caught one or two of those droids Ewoks hours, but I was kind of turned off by it. It was slapsticky and silly. The animation kind of turned me off a little too. However, in the 90s, the Sci-Fi Channel, they started rerunning episodes of the Droids cartoon. It's still too early for me. I think they put it on like 6 a.m. or something. But I had VCR technology at my fingertips, and I was able to record those and actually really see them for the first time as my Star Wars fandom was resurging alongside with the expanded universe releases and the Dark Horse comics and stuff. And then by 95, Hasbro started making the action figures again. And I was, in hook, line, and sinker. That was me. They got me. And I had made a pledge to myself. I am going to consume every bit of Star Wars content that exists. So I'm like reading books like The Glove of Darth Vader and silly stuff like that. And I kept up with it.
Mount Yoda, right? Isn't there Mount Yoda in the...
Mount Yoda, Mission to Mount Yoda. These are classics. Ken, the Jedi Prince, of course. Trioculus, the evil Trioculus. Yeah. When are they going to make that into a Disney streaming?
Oh, wait
show
long
for
enough.
Disney Plus?
Wait long enough. I do have to say, when we were talking so much over the holidays about the holiday special, and for those of us that weren't around at that time, we always ask, like, what did you think when you saw it? And the only thing I can compare it to, because I didn't see it when it came out, I wasn't even born. Yeah, I was. Heck yeah, I was born. I was a year old.
You were just a
baby. But the only thing I can compare it to was when I saw the Droids cartoon for the first time. I was 8 years old, and I had seen Star Wars and Return of the Jedi by that point. Still hadn't seen Empire Strikes Back. And I remember thinking, what the hell is this? Where are all the characters? Who's this guy with the mohawk? Does this happen after Return of the Jedi, or is this before Star Wars? I just couldn't figure it out. And I would watch it just hoping for a glimpse, because they would show Boba Fett in the intro, but I don't think he was ever on the actual show. I don't remember there being an episode. He was actually in an episode of the show?
Yeah.
I guess I didn't watch it long enough. But he was in every show in the intro on that skiff. Now that's showing them on Tatooine after they blew up the sail barge. So I tried to use that as a way to kind of figure out where in the chronology this took place. But it was just weird. It was so weird. And the fact that they never acknowledged anything from the original film, and we know why, because it takes place before, but I didn't know that as a kid. There was no Rebel Force Radio for me to listen to put it in context.
Oddly, there's a character from the Droids animated series named Kybo Ren.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Kybo. Kylo. But, they were fun. They were a product of their times, and it could have been much better. Star Wars animated cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons, could have been and should have been so much better than it actually was, but whatever,
Yeah.
Can't turn back the clock now, and now we have animation like The Bad Batch. Who's complaining?
Right. There's your Saturday morning. If you want to watch it on Saturday, watch it on Saturday. And then you can listen to Rebel Force Radio as we release our weekly podcasts on Saturday. Speaking of Rebel Force Radio, we're going to be on the road this May the 4th. Big event happening in Bristol, Connecticut. All the details can be found at rebelforceradio.com and on the Rebel Force Radio Facebook page. May 4th, 2024. We're going to be doing a live show. There's going to be a screening of The Empire Strikes Back. Be on stage. It's a very, very nice theater. It's perfect, I think, for doing a live podcast in front of an audience. I think it's going to be fantastic. And then, of course, the big main event, seeing Empire on the big screen. So that'll be great for, kids that maybe haven't had a chance to see it on the big screen, and adults, anybody that it never gets old seeing that one in particular. Plus, lightsaber performances, Padawan training, artist comics, food trucks. It's going to be a happening May the 4th, and we're going to be there. I think we've got some details about how you can be there as well.
For starters, if you want more information, obviously go to rebelforceradio.com, and you'll see the graphic there on our homepage. Just click on that, and that will take you directly to the City of Bristol website where they're promoting this whole whoop-de-doo. And we want to thank them for inviting us to this. It's going to be amazing. It'll be our first live show in 2 years. The last one we did, of course, was our famous night at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim with the Rooftop Bash. That was outstanding. But this is going to be a great one. We're going to be in a fantastic theater, seats about 600, and this is the first time we're really officially talking about this on the show. We teased our Patreon audience with this information, and we talked briefly about it on the Bad Batch after show. But this is the first time we're really discussing this in detail on the weekly podcast. And I got to say, already the response has been just overwhelming. We have so many loyal RFR listeners in Connecticut and in the surrounding region. And a lot of them you didn't have to really prod them very much. They jumped at the opportunity. So they're buying tickets. There is an admission for the event itself. I think it's $18 tickets. And you'll get a live RFR show, and we'll be bringing along friends with us, friends like the High Adventure Band. That's confirmed. They will be joining us on stage and providing musical entertainment with the Star Wars Edge. Of course, Glenn Nelson is always featured at our live shows. He's our musical director. He's our Paul Schaefer. And Glenn will be with us. And I know Baby Belushi plans on being there, and lots of friends of RFR. Of course, Tyler Page will be there with us. And we want you there with us, too. If you're coming into town, you can stay at the DoubleTree Bristol. That's the official hotel of May the 4th Be With You in Bristol. The DoubleTree Bristol, and they are taking reservations now. They want you to mention Bristol Parks guests when you make your reservations. You can either do it by calling 800-774-1500 or go to doubletreebristol.com and use the group code BPG under the special rates tab. You know, some people have been telling me they get a special rate when using it. Other people told me they didn't use it and got even a cheaper rate. So I don't know what's going on as far as that's concerned, but we just want you there. So join us on May the 4th. It's a Saturday, too. That's why it's so great to take advantage of this. It's happening on a Saturday, May the 4th. This is going to be the last time May the 4th is going to land on a Saturday until the year 2030. And that's 6 years away. It seems like science fiction to me to even be saying 2030, but
yeah, it's crazy.
Good Lord. So live RFR, Empire Strikes Back on the big screen, lightsaber training, Padawan training, artists, comics. I think there might be a Star Wars author or two joining us for the event. There'll be food trucks, and we want you there. So be sure to go to rebelforceradio.com. Click on the May the 4th Be With You graphic, and that'll take you right to the website where you can learn all the information you need, book those hotel rooms, and get your tickets now. I cannot wait for this event. We're going to have a great time, and we want you there with us for May the 4th.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Hey guys, this is Ryan from Australia. I have a question about Omega. Is the reason that her blood cooperates with Palpatine's or whatever midichlorian-rich blood they're using in Mount Tantus, is it because she's an experimentation, like she was engineered for her blood to be cooperative, or is the reason that her blood cooperates because she's an unaltered clone of Jango Fett? And if it is that she's an unaltered clone, could Jango Fett have initially been chosen by Palpatine, the ultimate puppet master, via Count Dooku, Darth Tyrannus, who hired him as the genetic template, to be the template for not only the clone army, but essentially Palpatine's never-ending reincarnation? Is that possible? I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
Now, that's a long game. That's playing the long game right there.
I mean, Palpatine, it's not as though this whole clone plot device ends with, Return of the Jedi or with A New Hope or the prequel. It goes 30, 40 years. It spans. At least he's working on this. So you're absolutely right. That is a long game. I have a theory that Palpatine didn't even think about clones for himself until the clone army was commissioned. I don't think that it's not clear to me that Sifo Dyas commissioned the clone army as a proxy for Palpatine. I thought that Sifo-Dyas did it because he was worried about the Jedi's ability to keep peace. He knew something was coming. War was coming. So I don't think I think that Palpatine, once he started to see the potential with these clones, then he started to be thinking about, wait, maybe these could serve a higher purpose for me. I don't know that Palpatine manipulated Sifo-Dyas into ordering the clone army.
Yeah, right. Like, where did Palpatine suddenly get this idea?
Yeah.
You know what I could do? I can transfer my evil essence into a clone body. Then I'll live forever. Oh, that's a great idea. That's grand. That's a grand scheme.
No, I think he really started to reconsider everything after Anakin suffered those injuries in the duel with Obi-Wan. Because maybe Palpatine was looking to transfer his evil essence into Anakin and become like this super Sith. But no, he couldn't do that once Anakin sustained those injuries. I mean, would you want to do that? The guy has to walk around in a portable iron lung. Mm-hmm. And he's got, he's missing arms and legs and he's all burnt up. And, Palpatine's like, I don't think so. I'm not feeling this anymore. It's like, it was too much of a burden because it's even surprising that Palpatine kept Anakin as Darth Vader around. But obviously he was able to retool him with cybernetics and everything and make him more machine than man. And that's, he's a perfect henchman. Yeah. But I think Palpatine believed Anakin prior to the injuries had much more potential. Mm-hmm. Much more. He was almost damaged goods at that point. But he stuck with him because of the fact that Anakin is steeped with the Force and he has a highest midi-chlorian count ever, and he's a perfect vessel for dark side energy. But the physicality of having the cybernetics and the bionics and iron lung and everything, that's just too much. That's just too much. So he decided, he got creative. He's like, well, I got this cloning technology. If I could just corner the market on that and make it only available to me, then yeah, I could have my scientists mess around with the clones and figure out a way where they could be a good vessel for his evil spirit when the time comes. Because Anakin clearly is not worthy of housing the spirit of the Sith like maybe Palpatine was originally planning.
Yeah. There's nothing in Palpatine's background that or anything about his character that makes me believe for 1 second that he was willing to concede that one day he'll be succeeded by a smarter, more powerful Sith. I think he wanted to stop that cycle. He wanted to be the last one. He took out Plagueis, and he was not going to let it happen to him. And Plagueis was taking a lot of safeguards to make sure that didn't happen to him. But Palpatine was able to best him. So
kill him in his sleep.
Killed him in his sleep. I mean, what kind of a coward does that? Kill a man in his sleep. But
well, maybe that's just the only way. That was.
It could be the only way.
Palpatine does say Plagueis did acquire the ability to cheat death. So I think you have to be awake to do it, though. You can't cheat death if you're sleeping on the job.
I gotta go back and read that book. Not that it's canon, but
he says it in the
Plagueis book.
He says it in the film.
He doesn't say that Plagueis was the only one that was able to cheat death. He says,
I think he did.
Cheat death was a power that only one has learned, but I know we can discover the secret. He doesn't come out and say it was Plagueis.
I think that is who he's talking about.
Could be. It could be.
I really do. But he kills him in his sleep. So, and also Palpatine is the realization of 1,000 years of plotting in the shadows and, you know, having the Sith totally in secrecy and building up their power and resources to the point where they had Palpatine, who was able to ascend to the throne of Grand Chancellor of the Republic. You know, I mean, that's, and then Emperor, make himself Emperor. So they realized their long-term goals through Palpatine and his success in the political realm. Yeah. So what's the point then in continuing this transference of evil essence from one to another, just put a stop to it altogether because they achieved their goal. So Palpatine was really just like looking at blue sky and not thinking about the traditions of the Sith anymore because he had achieved what all the Sith were working towards for a millennium.
Yeah. Ultimate unlimited power.
Yeah, that's it. Unlimited power.
He was in control of the universe. But he certainly didn't have any succession plans. He didn't choose Anakin Skywalker. I agree with you, Jim. He didn't choose Anakin because he thought he was, a good vice president, so that when he steps down as evil Sith Lord of the universe, that he was going to be replaced. That wasn't it. I do think you're onto something, that he thought he could possess Anakin over time, transfer his essence, as they say, into his body, and then when that went belly up, he discovered or started thinking about this cloning idea. So we can't. Yes, he is the Phantom Menace. Yes, he is responsible for a lot, but we can't necessarily blame him for everything or credit him for everything. Like, we can't credit him, I don't think, for Omega being. I think Omega being was exactly what Nala Say said, was an aberration. I think it was an aberration and a happy accident. They can't explain it, but that doesn't mean there's nothing special about her. There's definitely something special about her. We don't know exactly what that is, but whatever it is does allow her blood to mix successfully with high midichlorian count. So, but what is, I'm reluctant to tie everything back to Palpatine. And I could be misremembering the Sifo Dyas story, but I thought that his commissioning of the clone army that he did behind the back of the Jedi Council, but I don't remember it being for evil reasons.
No.
He did it because he was concerned about the Jedi's ability, their ability to maintain the peace. Because he knew something was coming.
Sifo Dyas had some vision of the future.
Yeah.
That really spelled out the fall of the Republic. And so he was trying to be proactive by creating an army for the Republic, which didn't exist. They did not have any sort of like military. They relied on the Jedi. Sifo Dyas didn't believe that would be enough. So he needed an army for the Jedi to lead. And that's exactly what happened. But the fate of Sifo Dyas must have Palpatine's fingerprints on it. His death was most likely orchestrated by Palpatine. And I know there's been books exploring this. There was that Dooku book a couple years ago that sort of delved into this a little bit. But nothing really seems solid and final when you're talking about Sifo Dyas. There's always room for interpretation of what is this actually an illustration of what Master Sifo Dyas looked like that you have here on the screen, Jay?
Yeah, I believe he showed up in that last season of the Clone Wars, in that Yoda arc.
No. You're thinking of Darth Bane. Darth Bane showed up in that, but I don't think Sifo Dyas had anything to do with that.
I thought that Sifo Dyas was in there. That he figured into that. Is
this where you got that image?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll be damned. Well, I'm going to have to go back and listen to the old roundtables and hear what we said back then.
Hold on. I think I've got an answer here.
I do go back and listen to old shows sometimes, and I go, wow, these guys really know what they're talking about. Whatever happened to that? It's an overload of Star Wars content has really made a lot of these things that get introduced into the canon hard to keep track of.
It can be. Really so here we go. Sifo Dyas, season 6 of the Clone Wars.
Yes.
Fans learn the truth about Sifo Dyas and how he was killed on the order of Count Dooku.
Yeah.
At long last, fans were given closure on the mystery of one of the most important moments in prequel history.
But that wouldn't have been the Yoda arc. That would have been the arc dealing with the malfunctioning chip in the clone's head.
Yes, that's right.
He turned on his Jedi generals and shot him down. I think his name was Kix. I can't remember. Gosh, there's so much going on here in Star Wars. I only know what's like right in front of me these days. You know?
Yeah.
I can give you some details about the Bad Batch and Ahsoka, and the Mandalorian. But wow, season 6 of the Clone Wars might be worth a rewatch since we're bringing it up here on the show.
Yeah,
just to refresh myself on all of these details.
Yeah,
because I feel like there was a period in time where I could pull any sort of information out of my butt when it came to Star Wars. And now there's just so much out there. There's only so much I can keep within my mental vaults. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm admitting it, I hope you in the listening audience aren't like losing confidence in your RFR hosts.
No.
But we're human,
Right. And we are definitely...
Maybe my chip is malfunctioning. I don't know.
Right.
Me and Swank had chips implanted into our brains just because we wanted to be.
No, I think we're remembering this correctly. Here's what I'm finding: that Sifo Dyas is a powerful but tormented member of the Jedi High Council, whose visions of the future greatly affect the galaxy. These visions convince him that a war is coming, and he needs to raise an army to defend the Galactic Republic. As it turns out, he's absolutely correct about the incoming turmoil, but he doesn't quite catch the role he has to play in the events. Thanks to Sith meddling, the army he starts building becomes the infamous clone trooper army, of course, that plays a crucial role. So,
is that from Wikipedia or someplace? Where are you getting this information?
No, it's Wikipedia.
Okay.
Yeah, Wikipedia, and that jives with what what I'm remembering. But here's the question: was Palpatine manipulating those visions that Sifo Dyas was having? Ooh. That could be. So
the ultimate puppet master,
Yeah, if it rains on your birthday, just blame Palpatine. I mean, that's the way this works.
Plays both ends against the middle.
Yeah.
And
Or were those really Force visions, which we know there's a precedent for? They could have been Force visions. I mean, Palpatine wasn't, even if it was Palpatine manipulating it, he wasn't lying. He was just showing him the future. So I tend to think that he was doing it for what he believed were good reasons at the time. But he went mad. And that's why we saw that image of him, the way he was portrayed in Clone Wars, with looking crazy. He looked like Jacob Marley.
From A Christmas Carol.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's the second Dickens reference. Back-to-back shows.
How does that
with Dickens
happen?
References. Yeah. That's the Force.
We've gone probably 17 years and never talked about Dickens. Twice in 1 week. All right, let's see. Let's get another voicemail. Thank you, Ryan. Let's check in. Let's see who's next.
Chat, boys. Chuck from Oregon. All I'm going to say is I just finished up newest episode of Bad Batch, Season 3, Episode 4. And all I got to say is, didn't think I would like Omega the way I do. They actually did really well with her character, and she's not an annoying little kid, and she's kind of a badass, and the writing is crazy good this season. Like, 4 episodes, they're 4 for 4. They're knocking it out of the park. I'm just going to say it. So far, this season is better than almost everything I saw in Season 3 of Mandalorian, which is really disappointing, honestly. But I mean, if they keep on a roll, maybe that would be awesome to see finish it off, because I know this is the finale. They're doing this is the end here, but I think this is going to have some nostalgia later on, and people are going to miss it once it's over. So what about a Bad Batch movie? That would be awesome to see. I know we've had long episodes and arcs, like the first episode of season 1 was like over an hour or something, but I'm talking a real movie with a beginning, middle, and end, and a send-off for these characters. I really grew to like them now. Like, season 3 is just hitting on all cylinders. So see what you guys think. Have a good one.
Yeah. A Bad Batch movie. Maybe, it all depends on how this winds up at the end of the season. We don't know if any of the Bad Batch are going to survive. I suspect they will, but we don't know for sure. We know Rex does, but he's not really a Bad Batcher. He knows the Batch, but we don't know if they survive. And as far as nostalgia, yeah, there's no question that fuels a lot of Star Wars, because the interest through the nostalgia, the interest perks up again, and people start to sort of be less precious about things, and they become more forgiving and sort of accept it more for what it was, and all the feelings that come back of how you felt when you were seeing it for the first time. It's also like rose-colored glasses, they say. So there's a lot of power in that, and it does seem to motivate Star Wars after nearly 50 years. So anything is possible. I agree with him on all counts about Omega. Never thought I'd like her as much as I do. Great character, and really enjoying the heck out of this season. And, as much as we love to speculate and stuff, I'm just enjoying the ride right now. I'm not too worried about if there's going to be a movie or if it's going to spin off into a series. We've got so much Star Wars on deck. We're going to be talking about it later in the news, that I'm okay with Bad Batch wrapping up and going on ice for a little bit. And if it makes sense to bring them back, bring them back.
I imagine that this series, the 3 seasons, I imagine it's all going to be self-contained. And you get your beginning, middle, and end with this series. I don't think there's too much potential to spin it off into a film, nostalgia or not, because I think they're going to really stick to the landing here and give us a solid end to the season. Because obviously we don't see any of the Bad Batch with Rex, McGregor, or just Gregor. That's his name, just McGregor. And Wolf, when we catch up with these clones in Rebels. It's just the 3 of them. And I really believe they're the last 3 left. I don't think there are too many clones left. There was that one guy who started a family somewhere, and they bring him back in the first season of Bad Batch, but his family's on the run, and outside of him, which is he's an aberration himself, a domesticated clone. But with our main guys, I just don't see really any clones moving beyond the season finale of Bad Batch, outside of the 3 I mentioned. Rex, Gregor, Wolf. I think that's it. I think that will be it with the clones. They will be eliminated completely via a war, a second Clone War.
Oh, you're still thinking that there's going to be a second Clone War?
Yes. Well, we'll know much more when we finally catch up with Rex and Echo and see what sort of support those guys have, because they were on the mission to find clones who were being oppressed, who were being thrown aside, who were being imprisoned, and help them out. Yeah. So maybe while doing that as like a humanitarian mission, it actually built up a militia that they can use against the Empire. And that's how the series will conclude, with all the clones being wiped out. It's Omega, though. That's the real twist. And a lot of people are talking about how Omega could be potentially Rey's mother, how or just, maybe not like biological mother, but they could like take samples from her and clone Rey, or who knows?
Right.
Who knows? There's so many different ways you can go with this story. But whatever direction they go in, I think when the season finale for this season, season 3, comes and goes and the series wraps up, that's it for the Bad Batch. And I think there'll be elements within the story itself that will make it very final.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the page is going to, or the chapter is going to close on the clones in general. I think there's still more story to tell in that period of time, but there is going to come a point when the only clones you see are the ones panhandling, like you saw in the Kenobi series.
Right, remember him.
Yeah.
So obviously some clones do continue on, but I mean, when they're
not in any great numbers. It's going to be, sadly, it's going to be kind of like nowadays seeing World War II veterans. It's very, very rare. Some of the older veterans that you see are Korean War veterans, and even the Vietnam veterans are looking pretty old these days. My grandmother, I remember her telling me stories when she was a little girl. She'd go to the July 4th parades, and you would see Civil War veterans in those parades when she was a little girl. So, smokes. Eventually, and you think of the age acceleration with these clones. But here's the thing to remember. We just rattled off a bunch of clones, including the Bad Batch, that have something off, something that makes them different. So there's always going to be, as Nalase called Omega, these aberrations. They were they were manufacturing hundreds of thousands of these clones, and so there were going to be errors, there were going to be issues, and so you never know. But as far as en masse, I think the chapter is closing on the clones. But I'm hoping for that big war, if not a full scale war, a big battle. I think we're going to get it on Mount Tantus. I think that is going to be sort of the last stand of the clone army, is going to be the Battle of Mount Tantus.
Yeah, as Rex, Echo, the Bad Batch, and whatever sort of militia they were able to build, they're going to storm the place to try to liberate all the clone troopers that have been held in captivity there and used as test subjects by Dr. Hemlock.
Yeah.
That's my speculation there. But I do think the Bad Batch, when the season finale happens, that'll be it for this story. To go back to one other thing he mentioned, Jango Fett. I don't think Jango Fett was chosen with Palpatine in mind at all. I think he was just chosen sheerly on the fact that he was a mercenary, so he could be bought, and he had exceptional warrior skills that could then be transferred to the clones via DNA or however. And so I don't see them retconning it to Palpatine thinking that Jango or a clone of Jango would be an appropriate vessel for his evil spirit when the time eventually comes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would also assume that there was something going on between Palpatine and Sifo Dyas, or Palpatine and the cloners on Kamino. I think that it was an independent choice for Jango. Hey, we do have a follow-up here. It wasn't too long ago. I think just a couple of weeks ago, we had this clip of Ewan McGregor talking about how he wants to do another season of Kenobi and how you might be able to help.
Yeah, just hope we can do another one. Can everyone write to Disney? I'll give you some email addresses at the end. I'll just say, Dear Disney, let's have a bit more of Obi-Wan Kenobi, please.
All right, let's do it. And Mac, you fulfilled Ewan McGregor's promise by giving out the email address right here on Rebel Force Radio.
Well, he is Obi-Wan Kenobi, for crying out loud, and I was just trying to give a Jedi an assist, okay?
Right.
That's all I was trying to do, is just help out a Jedi. Nothing wrong with that. So I suggested that our listeners write into publicity@lucasfilm.com. And, part of me thought I was just blowing smoke, but I knew someone would take the bait, and sure enough, you guys wrote in. And one guy in particular, Murph, reached out and let us know that he received a response. But first thing we discovered, though, was that publicity@lucasfilm.com their inbox is no longer being monitored by the company. And so they suggested writing to public relations@lucasfilm.com in their automated response. So Murph did that. He wrote to public relations@lucasfilm.com. He wrote them, "Let's do another season of Kenobi. Save the current day politics and agendas, and let's make a kick-ass story. Star Wars fans will come in droves. Thank you." And I heard this email address from Rebel Force Radio. Murph. So they responded. "Dear Murph, this will acknowledge your email from February 19th, 2024 to Lucasfilm regarding a suggestion and an idea that you have indicated might be of interest to us. The material you sent to Lucasfilm via email has been forwarded to me for a response. We appreciate your interest in our company. However, because your correspondence contains unsolicited creative ideas or projects, we are unable to review it."
This is outrageous. Yeah. Unsolicited, the star of the show solicited this. He's a producer. He's not just a star.
True.
He's a producer. Wow. Well, maybe so Murphy's right back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you misunderstood. These were really solicited by one of your employees, a producer on the series." Wow.
So they go on, blah, 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 explaining why they cannot accept unsolicited material sent by email from just randos who happen to get that email address. This is my favorite part. "We recognize your frustration and disappointment." Obviously, that
is a form.
They know that he's a Rebel Force Radio listener, so they immediately assume he's frustrated and disappointed.
"We recognize the source of your frustration and disappointment. We too listen
your source
to
for
Rebel
the Force,
right? Oh man!
But we hope they continue. But we hope you understand our need to adhere to this policy at all times. We hope you maintain your enthusiasm for our productions, and thank you for your interest in Lucasfilm. Sincerely, Nora Bishop, Lucasfilm Limited, LLC, Business Affairs." So. That's all the unsolicited stuff gets forwarded to poor Nora, and she has to BS her way through a response.
We have to completely flood Nora's email.
Well, just so we know that the new...
We can entertain her. I mean, it's got to be a boring gig sitting there. She can get some entertainment.
Listen, this is Obi-Wan freaking Kenobi making a request of fandom here.
Right.
So email publicrelations@lucasfilm.com and say, "Hey, how about a second season of Kenobi?" You don't have to offer them any ideas like Murph did about saving current day politics and agendas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just say, "We want more Kenobi." Just say that.
Yeah.
And flood their email inbox.
Yeah, love it. Love it. All right.
Yeah.
Do what the Jedi says. Flood the email inbox. All right. Well,
you guys are nuts, though. I knew you guys would write in. I just knew it. I'm like, I'm not just saying this. I know people are going to respond. Leave it to good old Murph to not only respond, but pass along the response he received from Lucasfilm to us. So keep it up. Maybe we'll get a second season of Kenobi. Now I'm like, that's like my drive, the thing that keeps me going more than anything is a second season of Kenobi. I never realized how badly I want it now.
Special thanks to Rebel Force Radio, Murph, and all of the other devoted fans who've made this
Ewan
request.
McGregor.
I can see it in the credits.
Ewan McGregor shows up at a convention. He's like, yeah, season 2 was DOA. It was never going to happen until Murph started to send email after email after email.
Where are you, Murph? Where's Murph?
Where's Murph? He stands up, gets a big round of applause. Come on up here, Murph. And then Murph lands a supporting cast role on the second season of Kenobi.
Better. Oh, and you and I are just sitting in our studios doing after shows.
That's what we do.
Right. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Well, if you want more of this in your life, the best way to do it is check us out over on Patreon. More Rebel Force Radio. That's right. More Rebel Force Radio, and Rebel Force Radio you can't find anywhere else.
Right. We got bonus podcasts, early bird releases, ad-free shows, and full show video. And it's happening over at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, along with an incredible community of Star Wars fans who all listen to RFR. And we've had a busy week this week. We've released RFR Q&A number 196, the Mount Rushmore of Star Wars animation. It's a great time. I talked to RFR VIP Mike Aragon, and this is the third of a series. In previous episodes, we've done in the Star Wars Mount Rushmore series, we've done the Mount Rushmore of Star Wars films, followed by the Mount Rushmore of Star Wars streaming series, and now the third part of the trilogy is upon us, the Mount Rushmore of Star Wars animation. And basically what we do is we pick our top 4 of the greatest when it comes to those specific categories. This time around, though, for animation, I picked, I had 2 lists. One list was just my favorites, my top 4 favorite moments in Star Wars animation. And then my second list was a Mount Rushmore composed of the most important moments in Star Wars animation. Not necessarily my favorites, but just the things that had the biggest impact. And we have a great time, me and Mike, breaking it all down. We also talk Bad Batch. We talk about some other things, but the focus of this particular Q&A is the Mount Rushmore of Star Wars animation. So a lot of fun with that conversation. You can hear the audio podcast or watch the full show video at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Also this week, the Babu Freaks return. The Freaks have returned with February Freaks. It's a bunch of tangents we go on. we talk about the Bad Batch, Dune, the High Republic, Jedi Survivor, kids getting injured in fail videos, and my sadistic delight in viewing that.
Oh.
And, we even talk about Chicago sports and weather, and it's just a good old time with me, Brian Klein, Tyler Page, and Barry Harmon. That's the Babu Freaks, Chicago area Star Wars fans. We all met each other through this podcast, and we've become good friends as a result. Plus, of course, we had the early bird releases of the Bad Batch after shows. I don't know if it was an early bird release. We did the show live, and everyone was able to watch it. But still, this show that you're listening to is available to RFR on Patreon supporters first. We always try to do that with the weekly show, get it out to you guys supporting RFR on Patreon. Sometimes you get the show 24 hours in advance. It's great. People love it. So that's patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. It's the place you want to go to support Rebel Force Radio and join a great community of Star Wars fans. Patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news.
Come closer, I have good news.
Yes.
All right, we got news.
Come closer.
We got news. We got a hodgepodge of news here at the RFR news desk. It wasn't too long ago we were talking about Collider's scoop that the ACOLYTE was going to be the next Streaming Plus series. It was going to air this summer. Now they say they've got a release date. They've got a release date for the first episode, and that is June 5th, 2024. Jim, it seems to check out. It is a Wednesday. So
Yes.
June 5th, 2024, the Acolyte may be premiering. There's another story that they seem to have gotten the scoop on, and that is the composer of the score for the Acolyte. It is going to be Michael Abels. Michael Abels is going to do the score. If that name sounds familiar to you, it might be because he's been associated with filmmaker Jordan Peele and has scored all three of his films, Get Out, Us, and Nope. He also did the soundtrack for the HBO movie Bad Education. And the film Breaking, which stars John Boyega, and another film from last year called Landscape with an Invisible Hand. So Michael Abels confirmed by Collider as being the composer of the score for The Acolyte, which they are claiming will premiere on Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. They did reach out to Lucasfilm, who did not confirm nor deny these reports.
The only, I saw Get Out, I saw Us. I can't say that the soundtrack leapt out at me. So I don't really know if I can't comment on his catalog and his work and even consider how he's going to fit into Star Wars musically. Obviously, big shoes to fill. John Williams, of course, setting the standard with the films, and the great composer Ludwig Göransson from The Mandalorian. Wow, what an impact he made! I never thought that I could. I thought I'd just be able to tolerate anyone in the wake of John Williams. Be like, I could just tolerate it, but I mean, I really loved what Göransson did with the Mandalorian music. He did such a great job with that, put his own stamp on it, and his music really matched the vibe, that space western vibe that Favreau and Filoni were trying to achieve, and did so with great success with the Mandalorian. So now we have the Acolyte. And we don't know anything about the Acolyte. We know it happens 50 years before the Phantom Menace. And it's a dark side perspective on the story, which is something we haven't really been presented with in the past. So I imagine it'll be a darker, more somber soundtrack. I don't think it's going to have your uplifting themes that John Williams was so well known for, or even the quirky nature of Ludwig Göransson's take on the Mandalorian soundtracks. I expect something very different from Michael Abels. And just as I expect something very different from the Acolyte in general. So It might be something, we can't even compare previous Star Wars compositions to.
Kevin
it's going
Kiner,
to be very interesting.
That sort of rock guitar thing that Kevin Kiner did with the Clone Wars, that was something that George Lucas was really pushing him, a direction that George was pushing him to go. I don't think George was interested in anyone trying to sound like John Williams. But then Rogue One happens and you get Michael Giacchino, and he did an incredible job, I thought, with Rogue One and making it feel like a big, lush Williams-esque score.
Very Williams inspired, very John Williams inspired.
Yes.
And Kevin Kiner was doing outside the box compositions for the early seasons of Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But it seems like they brought it all back after a while. And you notice that Kevin's music was very inspired by John Williams after a while. And he did a great job on Ahsoka too. So, and was able to flex some creative diversity as far as his music goes with Ahsoka. They did that rock song.
Yeah. Right.
Igiata or whatever it was called.
Oh, right.
Sabine's riding that speeder bike. Right. So there were other moments that were very non-John Williams.
Yes.
But yet Kiner makes it work. I was very impressed with the work he did with Ahsoka. And of course, I've liked a lot of the things he's done over the years with Clone Wars. Sometimes, within the box and other times outside the box. We've been exposed to so many productions now without John Williams at the helm of the music that I don't stress out about it like I used to. My God, I used to just be terrified at the mere notion of Star Wars being created without John Williams' musical oxygen filling the atmosphere. I was terrified at the idea. But great talents like Gina Carano and Kiner and Goranson, they've really opened my eyes to the fact that, John Williams doesn't necessarily own it anymore. And John's in his 90s now. I mean, we have to move on.
92.
If Star Wars is going to continue, we have to move on, and we have to be able to accept different takes on the tone, the style, and yes, the soundtracks for these stories. And I'm pretty open-minded about it. And I'll be listening very closely to the soundtrack for the ACOLYTE.
Yeah.
To see if, how that matches up to what has come previously.
Yeah.
And we'll have a lot of fun talking about it, too.
I know we got a lot of music enthusiasts in the audience. So if Michael Abels is a composer that you have some real exposure to and have some thoughts, ideas as to maybe why he's the guy for this, maybe there's a certain theme or a vibe that comes through his work, then shoot us an email, show@rebelforceradio.com. Would love to hear what you think as we get another composer in the pantheon of Star Wars composers. It's still a pretty small fraternity of people who have raised the baton in a Star Wars recording session, or I guess they don't raise the baton anymore. They just play the synthesizer, the keyboard. But you know what I'm saying. In
the case of Kiner, to a degree, yes.
Yeah.
And, of course, Goranson is an absolute wizard in the studio, and he utilizes everything from the most fundamentally primitive instruments to the most high-tech, intense sort of sounds that you can create out of electricity. So he's something else. To go back to the release date, though, you noted that June 5th is a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So are we going back to that? The 2 a.m. releases? Why did the Ahsoka experiment not work with the primetime drop here in the U.S., where the majority of Star Wars fans reside and consume the content? Listen, I know Star Wars has an international audience. It's worldwide. But the audience in other countries are dwarfed by the amount of fans in America.
Right.
And you have to focus on the biggest piece of the pie, and that's the good old USA, my friend. And I don't mean that as a put down to any Star Wars fan listening elsewhere. I mean, we just had a voicemail from Ryan in Australia. I'm so impressed by the amount of love and support Star Wars has from an international audience. But it's an American production, and it's consumed largely by Americans. The biggest fraction of Star Wars fans are here in America. And that's really, you can't debate it. And so I just wonder what happened with the Ahsoka experiment.
Does it mean that they can't still do a primetime drop on Wednesdays? They could.
True, they could. They really could. That'll mess up our schedule big time, my friend.
Well, why do you think they're doing it? I mean, come on.
Yeah, right. When does RFR do the after shows? Yeah, let's screw them over.
Right.
But yeah, so I really like that Tuesday night drop.
Yeah.
And then Wednesday, everyone would get caught up on it. But it created such a buzz and made the drops of new episodes such a big event. And I think that's where the focus should be, is exposing it to the biggest audience you can in America. That's where I think you'll get your biggest success, and create those moments where the next day people are at work talking about Star Wars. It doesn't happen with those 2 a.m. drops. It just doesn't. And everyone is so scattershot about when they're watching it. And people are fighting online about spoilers. And it's just, that's why I loved the accessibility of the Ahsoka debuts on Tuesday night. I really wish they would go back to that. And if you agree with me, all you have to do is type up an email and send it to media relations at Lucasfilm.
Poor Nora over there.
Oh,
Nora Bishop. She's going to get all kinds of unsolicited recommendations.
Yeah, she's living a nightmare now.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a couple of real quick updates. I'm actually springing these on Mac because there was no time to get them up on the rundown. These are very, very quick. But Jim, I don't know if you heard this or saw this, but there is there's a confirmed working title for The Mandalorian and Grogu. And to me, it sounded like a Toby Keith record. Rest in peace. But the working title is Thunder Alley.
Thunder Alley.
Thunder Alley. Oh, that was Thunder Road. Sorry. Thunder Alley.
Oh. Yeah, I don't think there's Bruce Springsteen references with Thunder Alley, but Thunder Alley is something I've heard of before. Where have I heard that before, Jason?
Well, I'll tell you where you heard it. It actually does have some prior art in Star Wars. Thunder Alley, according to the aforementioned Wikipedia, was a region of space along the New Republic borders that several fleets rotated to patrol. It was only referred to in Star Wars novel Before the Storm, which was the first novel of the Black Fleet Crisis trilogy.
Oh,
Thunder
my
Alley.
God.
Yeah.
Fleet Crisis trilogy. Now, there's a deep cut for you. I believe there was one whole, the middle book was just Lando and Lobot stranded on a ship somewhere, and it was just nothing but them walking up and down the corridors of the ship. The whole book. Wow. I was like, Black Fleet Crisis? How about Star Wars Publishing Crisis? Everything wasn't all just roses back in the day when Lucasfilm was owned by George Lucas and the expanded universe. Good old days. People look back at the expanded universe and they think it was perfect, but Black Fleet Crisis was a crisis of its own, from what I remember. Yeah, I think Luke was searching for his mother in that one, and he ended up going to a place. It was like a novelty restaurant, a theme restaurant. He stumbled into, and it was Jabba's throne room. It was the theme of the restaurant.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Do you remember this?
I remember hearing about it. I think I heard Kyle ranting about this at some point. How preposterous.
Kyle ranted.
The in-universe references. It's just, God, that was one of the most stomach-twisting aspects of the EU back in those days. And it just... I know it's a punchline. Oh, Swank doesn't read this, Swank doesn't read that. But every time I turned around, that's what I was hearing. I was hearing crap like that. Certainly didn't motivate me to pick up any books once I'd finished the Thrawn. I know there's some good books outside of the Thrawn, the initial Thrawn.
There's
trilogy.
some real good books. God, I used to adore those novel releases and stuff. And yeah, sure, sometimes I'd be sitting there in bed reading, Wendy'd be laying next to me, and I just chuck the book across the room. She goes, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "This book sucks." And this was during the old expanded universe days. And Black Fleet Crisis was one of those that did not pass the sniff test with me.
They've done a couple other things like that theme restaurant. It doesn't go to as something that's like Vader themed. There's a Vader themed, I don't know if it's a restaurant, but it's something.
There's a book called Heir to the Jedi, and I think it was the first book in the new Disney canon. And Luke is in a restaurant, and there's a musical tribute going on from whatever the live entertainment was. And the song they perform is Vader's Many Prosthetic Parts. That's the name of the song. Vader's Many Prosthetic Parts. And Luke had to sit there and endure this tune about Darth Vader's cybernetic, like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
His bionics and his...
So are we to believe that in a galaxy far, far away, there was a show on the HoloNet like Saturday Night Live, and they're parodying and spoofing the Emperor and Darth Vader on this show?
Yeah, that's kind of the concept of what we're talking about. Vader's many prosthetic parts.
Wow.
Someone's got to really write that in the book.
Oh, there are lyrics? Oh, please.
I don't think I made it
up.
Well, I have the novel, but it's not within me.
Well,
I stopped. I closed the book for good after that entry. After reading that, I closed the book for good, never to open it again. And I'm pretty sure my bookmark is still there. Where
from that night
they start performing this,
and there's still a dent in the wall from where the book hit the wall.
Yeah.
Hey, one other.
That's true. The bookmark might have flown out of the book when I chucked it across the room.
One other quick note about The Mandalorian and Grogu, in addition to its working title of Thunder Alley, is that SFGate is reporting, and that's an outlet that reports on filmmaking happening in the state of California, and they were very, very happy that The Mandalorian and Grogu will be the very first feature film in the Star Wars franchise that will be entirely shot in California. And it's expected to bring in over $160 million in revenue to the state. So they're very happy about that. They also talk a little bit about California's history with the Star Wars franchise, including one of my favorite moments of all time, this incredible photo shoot that was done for Rolling Stone with Carrie Fisher, that iconic gold bikini photo shoot. That was done at Stinson Beach. And
no kidding.
Are you?
That's up in the Bay Area. That's up. Yeah. Oh God. That's in the Mount Tamalpais region of the Bay Area, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, not far from Mill Valley. And I've hiked all over that area with my buddy Stu.
Oh, I thought that sounded familiar. Mount Tamalpais with Stu, right?
Tamalpais, yes.
Yeah.
So we hiked up that thing. And
did you ever see anything that looked like this hanging around up there?
No, I did not see anyone wearing a metal bikini. Even Stu wasn't wearing a metal bikini.
Oh, thank God.
And I would have paid top dollar for that.
But so they're very excited about that. But they also remind that, of course, a year prior to this famous photo shoot at Stinson Beach, Star Wars Return of the Jedi was being shot in the Del Norte County for all of the Endor scenes. So, and Cindy Vosberg, the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce there, reminds us that that production hired 100 residents of that area as stormtroopers. So this is before the days of the 501st. They needed to get residents there in Del Norte County to portray stormtroopers in Endor. So, but anyway, congrats to the great state of California. You got your first Star Wars film to be shot entirely there. Probably not a huge surprise, Jim, that they're going to be leaning on a lot of the same locations and using the same facilities as they've done for The Mandalorian television show. So for this to be shot in California in its entirety is not a huge surprise. But
plus, Bob Iger promised shareholders that they were going to be slicing and dicing away at that budget to try to save as much money as possible, because they've lost as much money as possible. So it doesn't surprise me that this is going to be a localized shoot in the California area, utilizing a lot of the resources they've been using for the Mandalorian streaming series. No surprise there.
All right, and finally, we've got Gina Carano. Some news coming out of that lawsuit. She's still making the rounds, talking about her big moment to take on the mouse, and she's on the PDB PDB podcast, and we have some audio highlights there.
Right. This is a fresh interview with Gina. It surprises me that she's going out on the interview circuits to talk about this lawsuit, because usually attorneys will say, "Don't say nothing about this thing until we get it into court." Let's build the momentum. But she's already discussed it so much at this point, and she's really pleading her case for why she was excused from her gig on The Mandalorian, and obviously she's claiming there's some discrimination there, among other things. A lot of bullying going on. Now, this show, I've never heard of this show before. The PBD podcast. It's a podcast that discusses. This is their own description. It's a podcast that discusses current events, trending topics, and politics as they relate to life and business.
Oh, so specific.
And I gotta say, I did enjoy the show. It was refreshingly pragmatic and straightforward, and very sympathetic toward Gina Carano and her current situation. And they talk about, it's a long interview too. She's there for 2 hours. And I picked a few choice moments in the show to share with everyone. The first one is Gina talking about her relationship with Kathy Kennedy. This is something to consider. Kathy's executive producer on The Mandalorian, obviously the head of Lucasfilm. So, the buck stops at her desk. And I think a lot of us assume that Kathy Kennedy has at least some sort of substantial relationship with the creatives and actors under her wing. And Gina talks about that, and you'll see that that's not actually the case at all.
My experience with Kathleen Kennedy, and by the way, she has had a phenomenal history of work.
Sure.
That I respect as a woman to woman. You'll see her name pop up on some of these movies, and it's like, wow, that is quite incredible, actually. And so I don't know her entire story. I don't know what made her have this wall of defense that she's had. Maybe she'll tell us all that story someday. But it was very cold, but trying. So Jon Favreau, who is the complete opposite, is just this bear of a man who is just the most lovable person. And he would, I get shyer. And so he would be like standing there between me and Kathleen Kennedy and try to initiate the conversations. And it wasn't ever bad on set. It wasn't ever anything like that. I had no problems on set. It was beautiful on set. And if a woman's like that, it's fine. There's plenty of women that are like that. You don't have to be the executive of a company and be a nice person. But it was the problems that came afterwards and that energy that happened.
So what was that experience like? So on set, you worked on set with her and Favreau.
She was there very rarely.
Very rarely.
I think I saw her maybe 2 or 3 times.
And your interaction with her when you spoke, if we were to say, this is how many minutes I've spoken to Kathleen Kennedy, what would you say the total time is?
I'd say 20 minutes.
Okay.
It was like 2 magnets. I was trying to be my normal self. And I remember we went to the Star Wars Celebration, and we were all up on stage, and we go through, everybody go through, they get announced and they go through and they shake everybody else's hand. And Kathleen Kennedy, I think, was towards the end, and she shook everybody else's hand, and I go to shake her hand, and she didn't shake my hand.
Get out of here.
And I was like,
okay.
All right, what is that?
Accidentally, she didn't see it, or intentionally?
She just looked at me.
Well, she never strikes me as being all that warm and fuzzy, Kathleen Kennedy.
No.
Not that everyone needs to be. I mean, some people are...
That's what Gina says.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a sweet person to be the head of a company.
No. But to slight somebody like that, it's not a very classy move.
No, not at all. I was really surprised to hear that they only had about 20 minutes of interaction. because Gina was working for Lucasfilm on The Mandalorian for like 2 to 3 years.
Right.
And only and being touted as the lead in a show that Jon Favreau was developing.
Well,
we'll hear more about that in a minute.
Don't forget, there were always rumors, perhaps false, but there were rumors that Kathleen Kennedy was not a welcome presence on the set of The Mandalorian.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, you can believe what you want to believe. I mean, that might be true. That's why she was only there a couple of times over the course of 2 seasons. Gina says she saw her on set maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
But also Gina wasn't there for every moment of the production either. I mean, she was there for like half the episodes. So it's just the things that jump out to me. Wall of defense surrounding this person. Very cold. This is Gina's words. Refused to shake her hand. That kind of indicates to me that there was some prior hangups that Kathy had herself with Gina, even early on. Why would she refuse to shake her hand?
Yeah, I don't remember what context, if Gina gave any context in that clip about when this happened.
Star Wars Celebration Chicago, when the cast was announced and brought out on stage.
Okay, so that is very early on.
Yes. We were in the room. We should have been yelling, shake her hand, Kathy. Come on.
Well, all I can say is it's Hollywood, and there is a single ideology that runs through Hollywood, and if you don't subscribe to it, or if you're just branded as someone who doesn't subscribe to it, there are consequences.
But that was even before Gina started to expose a lot of her own personal thoughts online.
But I think Gina was known as being somebody who marched to a different drum.
Perhaps.
I don't think that just
might have been a
happened.
turnoff for Kathy.
Right. And I think it probably was for a lot of people. And usually it's just, it doesn't even have to be something that someone said. It's just like, it's a whisper. Hey, did you hear? Did you hear who she voted for?
She voted for. Hey, listen, there's a lot of people out there who push back and say Gina was never fired. She wasn't under contract. You can't say Lucasfilm fired her. But in this next clip, Gina's going to provide some information about having knowledge that she had a future at Lucasfilm. And Jon Favreau had backed her up on this because he had created the show Rangers of the New Republic for her. And he actually informed her of this, which to me creates something of an oral agreement, not quite a verbal contract, but I don't know how the courts determine what is and what isn't a verbal contract. And that can be binding. At the very least, Gina was aware she had a future with Star Wars. And it was the guy running the whole shebang who told her that. So we're going to hear about that call in this next clip. And I think this puts to bed the notion that apologists make for Lucasfilm that Gina was never fired because she wasn't currently under contract. Another contract was forthcoming, and you'll find out about it in this clip.
I got a phone call from Jon Favreau, I think it was October or November, and they had told me, he had said, I was like, okay, what kind of conversation is this going to be? And he was like, it's all positive, Gina. It's great. Everything's good. You're going to be great. And I want you to know that your life's about to change because I have written the pilot of Rangers of the New Republic, and it was okayed by Disney, and you're on your way.
What a phone call.
And it was like, after all of the awful things that had been happening, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. This is wonderful.
Okay.
So close.
She was dealing, this was in the wake of her, quote, controversial tweet where instead of using pronouns to identify herself, she simply said 3 words, nonsensical words at that, beep, bop, boop. And that triggered Lucasfilm into their course of action where they wanted to educate her.
Re-educate
Beep, bop,
her.
boop. So Favreau then calls her, and she's like, oh, God, he's going to pile on. I've been getting these calls from Kathy Kennedy's office and Lucasfilm and Lucasfilm PR, which Lucasfilm PR, they fuel a lot of this crap. And she thinks Favreau's going to call her and say, hey, you gotta cool down on your rhetoric. Beep, bop, boop. Oh, my God. What are you saying, woman?
No one in Star
Beep, bop,
Wars should
boop.
say
How
beep,
dare
bop,
you
boop.
say beep,
Yeah.
bop, boop. Oh, my God. But instead, he's calling to tell her he has developed a pilot for her called Rangers of the New Republic. And he told her, she says, October, November. She's talking October, November 2020. Remember, December 2020 is when Lucasfilm had a big investors whoop-de-doo where they announced all kind of stuff, Rangers of the New Republic being announced by Kathy Kennedy at that very event. So, I mean, all of this stuff adds up. It shows that there was a reality to the fact that Gina Carano had a future at Lucasfilm and Star Wars. And it was locked. And Jon Favreau said the next steps were going to change her life because she was going to have the prime role in Rangers of the New Republic. But that all went to hell a few months after the announcement when Gina got fired. And the way that Gina got fired, the way she learned that she was no longer going to be employed by Star Wars and Lucasfilm was there was a tweet from Lucasfilm which announced that they were parting ways with Gina, and they referred to her commentary as abhorrent. And they used a bunch of other terminology that was very damning and very damaging to Gina Carano and her future. And she discusses that tweet here in this next clip.
My question, I really can't wait to understand this one thing, is, and you could probably pull up what they said about me, the comment that they said I was denigrating people off of cultural and religious beliefs and that it was abhorrent. I want to know so badly who okayed that. That had to have been someone at the top that had to have been okayed because that was so damaging. And that quote right there was basically telling the rest of the industry, do not touch this person. She's off limits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? I really, it may not have been a perfect analogy, her tweet. It really irritates me when people play so dumb that they're offended by it. Because in terms of her denigrating anybody, that wasn't the point of the tweet. And you'd have to be completely intellectually dishonest and bankrupt to say that you misunderstood it as a slight against a race or ethnicity or a religion. That's not what it was intended. You can still disagree with it, and you can still say it was extreme or divisive, whatever you want to say. But it wasn't about denigrating anybody. That was a convenient way to sound the alarm bells.
And destroy her career. Which,
right.
I mean, they
And
made
life.
it became
Career
so
and life.
personal.
Yeah.
And it was very clumsy. The point she was trying to make in that tweet, it was poorly executed. It was very clumsy, and she should have known better, but she didn't because she's naive. And she was just, I think it was just an innocent mistake. And they refused because obviously in the wake of the horrifying beep bop boop commentary she made that, I mean, just sent shivers down my spines, beep bop boop. But they wanted to, re-educate her and reprogram her or whatever, and she refused. Yeah. She wasn't gonna play ball with that, so they were looking for any slip up.
Yeah, somewhere word went out, whether it was official or unofficial, word went out that Lucasfilm or Disney was really encouraging their employees, their talent to make a stand on social media and add their pronouns in solidarity.
Yes.
Solidarity.
I know this for a fact. I've had Star Wars actors tell me in confidence that they were approached by Lucasfilm making those type of demands, those controlling, heavy-handed demands that they insert pronouns into their bios and all that. So, I mean, hey, listen, if you're listening and you feel fulfillment by placing pronouns into your bio or using it in your everyday life, I mean, that's fine. That's great. That's your choice. That's how you live your life. But to demand,
you don't compel
that everyone around you, do that. That's heavy-handed and over your skis as far as the relationship between a corporation and an employee. And I'm sorry, that's how I feel about it. I know a lot of other people feel that way, and I know Gina feels that way. But I mean, just to emphasize the type of heavy-handed control that Lucasfilm PR uses with their talent. This next clip is Gina revealing that Lucasfilm not only wanted her to make adjustments to her social media bios, but they also wanted to control who she followed with her social media accounts.
One of the first emails that I remember being really irritating me was, oh, by the way, they're asking if you would unfollow these couple accounts. And they were YouTubers who had been very critical of the new Star Wars movies and some Disney.
Who's they?
PR people?
The PR people, were saying that these people didn't have nice things to say about Kathleen Kennedy and that they would like me to unfollow these accounts because I was very engaged in interacting with these people. I was new to Star Wars, so I was excited about I wanted to learn as much as possible. So who else to learn from? The fans that have been, following it all of these years. They're telling me unfollow these accounts. And so, of course, you don't want to rock the boat. I don't like to, So I was like, oh, okay. And then I didn't. And I kept on following these people. And it just made me look, when you tell somebody not to do something, they're like, wait, what? And so you keep on looking, and you just think, I should be able to follow who I want to follow on my own social media account. And these heads of companies, of the biggest companies in the world, should understand that, it's almost like they went in and they just threw away to some of these fans. They just bombed their, dreams and their Star Wars. And so they're upset about it. And then to go and tell the actors and the producers and the directors and people, hey, these people are racist, these people are this, and smear these YouTubers who, they're human beings. They're not going to be perfect, but they're genuine critics. Whereas Rotten Tomatoes is getting paid off by studios, and that's been proven. So we're actually excited about the YouTubers, genuine thoughts and feelings on stuff. And I love watching them grow into more professional, well-spoken, seeing all sides of the coin here. But that didn't sit well with me, so I didn't unfollow these accounts.
Yeah, and I probably have an idea of some of the YouTubers that they're referring to. Not going to mention any names here, but there was a time when I really believe that a lot of the real nuking, and it was like a nuclear bomb of fandom. I really believe it could have been avoided. Some of that fallout could have been avoided. I think Lucasfilm really dropped the ball. Lucasfilm under Disney really dropped the ball with fan relations. I think going back to the beginning of the acquisition, I don't think they. I really don't believe that they understood what fan relations really were. And if you had more talent associated with these new shows, reaching out and being part of and being accessible to the fan community through trusted voices, like some of these YouTubers, podcasters, maybe even, not too dissimilar to what we did with the Clone Wars many, many years ago. I think that things could have been better, but they didn't even try to do that. They said, not only can you not appear on their show, I'm sure that would have been absolutely verboten, but we don't even want you to follow them. We don't even want anyone that's on your anybody that follows you on YouTube or on any of these social platforms to know that you follow these people because they're critical. They're critical of our product. They're critical of the direction that we're taking the storytelling. I think it would have been far more effective to say, no, we're not running away from our critics. We're not running away from the people who aren't sycophantic and licking our boots. We want to hear from them. We don't have to agree, but we want to hear from them. We want to hear what they have to say.
You know, I always look back at the relationship that sports radio and professional teams have. And find me a sports radio commentator that will give a professional sports team a free pass on everything they do. No, their entire shtick is fueled by criticism. And the teams will work with that, and they live with that. They don't have to like it, but they don't get so petty and controlling where they try to shut it all down. Instead, they should be working with all of these different YouTubers or podcasters or whatever, critics, and show them maybe a little bit about how the sausage gets made, because it will create more of a feeling of trust and understanding between the two entities. But no, it's just pettiness where Bob Iger, he wants to save money. Maybe he should look in these PR departments and say, why are you looking at who these people are following? And shouldn't you be doing something better with your time? Is that what we're paying you to do? Is to obsess over people's personal social media accounts? What's the matter with the way that this is all working? I mean, it's just, I don't understand it.
What an unnecessary distraction and waste of time, resources that is. I can't think of anything further away from the art of making films and television to be consumed by a mainstream international audience than policing people's social media. Get a life.
It's heavy-handed, controlling, and obscene, really. If I thought this was a free country. So that's Gina's. Those are the comments that I pulled from the interview. You could check it out at PBD Podcast. They present some very interesting takes on the way the Disney business model is, the way that the investors relate to the business, and a lot of interesting infighting that's going on amongst investors as well. So it's really very compelling stuff. So that's what's going on with Gina. I know some people are getting very fatigued by hearing about this. I didn't want to hear another word about Gina Carano because I was getting sick and tired of a certain fraction of fandom treating her like she was some sort of martyr or something.
Right.
But the more this becomes legitimate as far as a legal complaint and an eventual court date or settlement, here's the thing. It's a lose-lose for Lucasfilm. If they do succeed in forging a settlement with Gina, that will look like admitting guilt.
Yeah.
But if they decide to fight Gina and it goes to court, then we're going to be hearing about emails and text conversations, and people will be getting called to the stand, familiar names, including perhaps Kathy Kennedy herself, and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and Pedro Pascal. Can you imagine? Oh. So it's going to be quite a scene, and we will be following this on Rebel Force Radio. We'll be following this story as it unfolds, because I think it's becoming more and more important, especially to me as someone who has had relationships with Lucasfilm in the past and their PR department, and who have witnessed some very heavy-handed and controlling actions coming from them.
Right.
So we will be following this story.
Will you check under the bed and make sure there's no Disney executives under there?
I promise there's not.
I'm scared, Mom. Will you please just look and make sure Kathleen Kennedy isn't under my bed?
Your source for the Force.
Hello, what have we here?
All right. Well, the Billy Dee Williams autobiography has already hit shelves, and it's available as an audiobook. And I'm sure you expected Jimmy Mack to peel through it and pull us some highlights of Billy Dee finally putting his fabled life onto the page and onto your iPhone, your iPod, whatever the hell you were listening to audiobooks on, for people everywhere. So what have we here? The new autobiography from Billy Dee.
I've been checking it out. And the brilliance of this is the audiobook is indeed narrated by the man himself, Billy Dee Williams. And that's what we wanted. And so I pulled a few choice highlights for this week, which will eventually lead us to our Billy Dee Quote of the Week. And this is something that I kind of want to be a recurring bit here on RFR as I continue to work my way through the audiobook. So this is the first in a series, Swank.
All right.
First in a series. And let's talk about the early days of Billy Dee's involvement with Star Wars and his initial reaction upon learning about the character of Lando Calrissian.
The character they had in mind for me was a former smuggler, gambler turned roguish overseer of Cloud City, the floating mining colony of Besman, and an old acquaintance of Han Solo's. He was my kind of guy, the full spectrum of colors. I said his name to myself. Then I said it out loud. Lando. Lando Calrissian. The name was Armenian. It had multiple syllables. It had a rhythm. It sounded like music. Lando Calrissian. The brief character description said that Lando wore a cape. I read that and grinned like a kid who saw a pile of presents under his Christmas tree. I mean, a cape. Amazing. It was old school. I immediately began to get a sense of his character. Lando Calrissian. He was a swashbuckler, straight out of the movies my mother had taken me to see as a child. A pirate with a rakish smile, a naughty glint in his eye, and a cape. I saw him in my head. He wasn't written black or white. He was beyond that, bigger than that. He was straight out of Dumas, via Flash Gordon. He was a star.
But the question is, was he excited about the cape? Was Billy Dee excited about the cape? Jeez. Wow, the enthusiasm after all these years that he still has. You know, the clip starts out and he's pretty mellow, and then it really builds into this crescendo as the passion for the character and the excitement comes rushing back to Billy Dee.
That's what you find is the general tone of this entire audiobook. It goes from moments where Billy is clearly reading. I was offered the role in a movie that my agent thought I should take. And then he gets excited. Lando Calrissian. He was a star. I mean, it really does. It jolts you. When you can really tell when Billy Dee is feeling that moment as his own history flushes back in front of him and around him and he just feels the same excitement that he had initially realized upon hearing about Lando Calrissian.
Mm-hmm.
It's Armenian. And he always said it's multi-syllables. I was like, well, Lando Calrissian, that's six syllables. I never really judged anything as far as how many syllables it had.
Han Solo had 3. I had twice as many.
I mean, even Luke Skywalker was only 4 syllables. Lando was 6. I'm a star. And I just love Billy Dee so much, and I love to hear those elements of his true personality spill through, because he's the real deal. Even at this age, he's in his mid-80s now, he still is the real deal, full and through. And he loved his co-stars. on the set of Empire Strikes Back, got along with all of them. But Carrie Fisher certainly made a big impact on him.
Carrie was one of those people whose entire being was adorable, with a disarming smile and expressive eyes that were windows into a dazzling mind. One look and you were under her spell. I certainly felt that way. And what a remarkable spell it was. Untold depths of brilliance, humor, sex appeal, shenanigans, danger, and mystery. The daughter of Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher, she was Hollywood royalty. She knew everyone. She was hip. She was hilarious. She was brilliant. She was beautiful. And on top of all that, she was Princess Leia. The point being, when Leia stepped into view and Lando glimpsed her for the first time, I didn't have to pretend to turn up the charm as I said, "Hello, what have we here?"
Woo!
My smile was real. I took her hand, put it to my lips, and welcomed her aboard, only to have Han snatch her away from what he knew was a charm trap. "You old smoothie," he said.
A charm trap.
Yeah. Oh, that's Billy Dee. That's like the best way to describe Billy Dee himself. He is a charm trap. And not only does he describe himself via the character of Lando as a charm trap, which is so very accurate, the way he describes Carrie is about as accurate as it gets. I mean, all the different perspectives he throws: adorable, shenanigans, humor, beauty, danger. You know, that's all Carrie Fisher. She encapsulated all of that in her personality, and that did not get by Billy Dee Williams. No, sir. No, sir. Let's jump into our next clip where Billy Dee talks about an exchange he had with Mark Hamill, where they talk about a memo they received as members of the crew. And, you know, Lucasfilm, that whole thing where they have to keep everything super secret and under wraps, we sort of learn how that all really began. And it began with a memo that was sent out to the cast of Empire Strikes Back. And here you hear Billy Dee sort of recounting a conversation and he had with Mark Hamill about this memo. And you find out who exactly is the person behind Lucasfilm's desire to keep everything secret. Someone was yapping, and Billy Dee tells us.
Between takes, Mark and I joked about the memo everyone had recently received, reminding us that everything about the movie was to be kept secret. We knew that, of course. We also knew the warning was intended for actor David Prowse, who played Darth Vader, and tended to speak freely to just about anyone who asked him a question. As a result, the production company assigned someone to keep a log of leaks and who was responsible. And they were usually traced back to this gentle, personable man. Who would have thought Darth Vader was such a gossip?
So, of course,
man.
And it's true. I mean, Dave Prowse, he had a notorious reputation as someone who would spill the beans, even up to the point where years after his work in front of the cameras as Darth Vader had concluded, Lucasfilm got so tired of his commentary, they ended up banning him from official Star Wars events all the way up until the day he died. And I remember that this was a big problem when it came time for Star Wars Celebration, because the guys who ran the autograph hall were really upset because Darth Vader always had a line of people, you know, seeking his autograph. There was a constant line of traffic for Darth Vader's autograph. And I mean, he's Darth Vader, but Lucasfilm said, no way is Dave Prowse going to be allowed at any more Star Wars events. And to me, I mean, they probably made that call a couple decades too late. But they put up with him as long as they could. So unfortunate for Dave Prowse. He was somebody who was very open. Me and Jason, we've had the opportunity to talk to him on Rebel Force Radio many times back in the day, and there was no filter there. He one time told us he was happy when Return of the Jedi director Richard Marquand passed away. Who says that? Who says that? He had
a brutally
no
honest man, I'll tell you.
Brutally honest.
Yeah.
But that leads us to our Billy Dee Quote of the week.
This is Billy Dee Williams, Lando Calrissian. It's time for the Quote of the Week.
Who would have thought Darth Vader was such a gossip?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's a good one. So you're going to continue to bring us audio highlights from the autobiography, and only one per week will wear the crown of the Quote of the Week.
Right, yes. So the Billy Dee Quote of the Week is back, courtesy of Billy Dee Williams' new audiobook, What Have We Here? So stay tuned next week, and we'll have a new Quote of the Week from the audiobook.
Chewie, get us out of here!
Well, so far, Jim, would you say that you recommend the Billy Dee autobiography to those out there that might be curious?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. It's great, yeah.
And
he pulls back the curtain on a lot of things throughout his
I was going to say, obviously, Star Wars is covered, but I mean, he's had an incredible career, and if you're interested in how he grew up and when he grew up and how he got into acting, I'm sure it's all covered in there.
I listen to it only for tips on how to be cool. That's why I listen to it. I want to know how he became cool. Well, very, very little at this point, but believe me, the more I keep listening to the audiobook, the cooler I will be on the show as we continue to push out Rebel Force Radio as the upcoming weeks unfold, along with the Bad Batch After Show. And then, of course, you can see RFR live in Bristol, Connecticut on May the 4th. We want you guys to join us in Bristol. Be sure to visit rebelforceradio.com and click on the banner that you see there, the graphic promoting May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Day, May the 4th, 2024 in Bristol, Connecticut. We want to see you there.
We also want to see you joining us over on Patreon, patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio for the weekly full show video of the podcast you're listening to right now. If you're an All Access member or above, you can be watching us instead of just listening to us. In addition to all of the podcasts that you can't get anywhere else that Mac talked about earlier in the show, including the Babu Freaks, the Q&A, all of that can be yours, including access to this fantastic Star Wars community. Check it out. Also on YouTube, we were talking about Dave Prowse. Not just David Prowse, but a lot of our interviews over the years with Star Wars celebrities and alumni from the film. You can check those out over on the Rebel Force Radio YouTube page. Go to Rebel Force, or go to youtube.com/Rebel Force Radio. Please do follow us on our socials. We'll never tell you who to follow or who to unfollow, but we will recommend you follow Rebel Force Radio on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram. And check out our website, rebelforceradio.com. Your source for everything RFR. But if you want to really help us, the best thing you can do is what you're doing right now, which is listening to the show, recommending it to your friends. Got a new Star Wars series on the air, so you might be, if you're known in the office as the Star Wars guy or gal, do your friends a favor, and after you answer all their Bad Batch questions, you can say, hey, for more of this kind of talk, you can listen to Rebel Force Radio. It's a great podcast. So please subscribe if you can on your podcatcher of choice, and leave us a review. We love the reviews. Just one rule, please.
Make them good.
All right, we will see you next week with another Bad Batch After Show, live 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, and then more weekly Rebel Force Radio coming your way on Saturdays when the podcasts go live while we are in Bad Batch season. So until then, we'll see you next time for Rebel Force Radio. I'm Jason.
And I'm sending an email to publicrelations@lucasfilm.com.
Oh, poor Nora. Remember,
The Force will be with you, always.
Lando Calrissian. He was a star.